Okay, I figured this was a video I might eventually end up making by the topics I talk about, so let's get into this. Now, okay, I do not want to blame one specific thing here, whether it's women, feminism, porn, men, corporatism, or any of that. Although, I think there is one thing I do want to blame here, but whatever. There is a bigger picture to this, and that's kind of what I want to highlight. Now, there's a book called Open Society and Its Enemies by Karl Popper, and it describes how the pursuit of knowledge and rationality, or at least Popper's version of those two virtues, will lead to an open and free society. Open society. Open does not mean open as an open source. You'll find out what open means. Open basically means the complete dissolution of all human characteristics, groups, and things like families, things like communities. We just dissolve all of those. Karl Popper argued that traditions and other organic social customs that cannot be directly understood by rationality should be destroyed. Basically, here's the quote that summarizes it. As a consequence of its loss of organic character, an open society becomes by degrees what I should like to term an abstract society. It may, to a considerable extent, lose the characteristic of concrete or real groups of men, may be explained by way of... Okay, so I'm just going to put a picture of this. Basically, we could conceive of a society in which men practically never meet face to face, in which all business is conducted by individuals in isolation who communicate by typed letters or telegrams and who go around in closed motor cars. That part is like the crux of it, right? It's just business. There's no humanity at all anymore. This is what Karl Popper envisioned as the open society, the best society. And obviously, if you know anything, George Soros, who is basically Karl Popper's bitch, named his foundation after this as well, the Open Society Foundation. Yes, it is named after the book. And if we dig a little deeper into this, in a depersonalized society where relationships mean nothing, commitment is seen as oppressive, and doing daily chores are seen as a waste of time and a waste of efficiency because they can be delegated to slaves from third world countries or robots or corporations, people will actually be more miserable. And I'll explain why. An open society is a miserable society. In Popper's time, many traditions were oppressive because certain groups of people got certain roles that were just kind of shit and they were not really appreciated. Women, mainly back then. Think about it. Things like marital rape in the 1950s was not even recognized, and husbands really had power over their wives. Not addressing issues like this caused resentment towards traditions by certain groups. And then naturally, one of the core tenets of feminism was to abolish the institute of marriage because they did see marriage as oppressive. And in a certain time span in history, it was an oppressive thing. In fact, for a very long time, marriage was literally an oppressive thing. Women basically had no say in who they were going to marry, and once they were married, they were basically a slave to their husband, quite literally. And this combined with the Enlightenment era, my favorite philosophical era, all right, don't get me wrong, led to some progress in the wrong way, quote unquote, so to speak. And at the same time, corporations were also growing and getting stronger. And they wanted to become the religion. The new American religion is corporatism. They worship billionaires.
Everything's a product. We're licensed intellectual property.
Instead of worshiping virtue or, I guess, God or historical figures. And it's just all about money, right? That's the new American religion. They wanted more labor. So the corporations used this rationality and feminism to basically tear down the family unit further. That's right, the nuclear family is not actually real. There was a time in which families were actually multi-generational, even American families. And now, the corporations are trying to tear down family even further and make them, I guess, single mom families or whatever it's called. So everybody is working. And yeah, now we are going into single mother households where children are raised by the state. Or oil companies in the United States, because oil companies in the United States control state education a lot. I'll talk about that later. This is also considered open in Popper's sense of the word. Women are now free and they don't have to raise children. They can work and pursue economic success, okay? Earlier, families would take care of each other. Grandparents would be an active part in the child's life and pass down wisdom and shit. And they would be taken care of by the family. They would work for the family and be taken care of by the family. And back then, no state was needed, right? But now, now we need the state or some old age home or something. And now older people need to work. And now children are sent to daycare. And You see where I'm going with this, right? Everything becomes delegated, everything becomes a business, and the organic character that works is kind of being destroyed.
Everything's a product. We're licensed intellectual property. Shiny yellow product.
In an open society, most of our life is delegated to mega corporations, or at most other businesses, usually big businesses. However, these mundane parts actually make up our life. It is what life is about. Yes, a certain amount of efficiency and specialization is good. Let's say you're a homesteader. You cannot be expected to do everything on your own, right? Yes, your town is supposed to have a beekeeper and a hatchery, right? You're not expected to do everything by yourself. There's supposed to be some kind of interdependence, if you will. I'm not advocating for like full self-sustainability. So yes, a certain amount of efficiency and specialization is good, but being town sustainable is necessary. Okay, earlier people depended on communities. Now they depend on corporations. People used to live. Now they just consume. From the thumbnail, you can probably guess what kind of argument I'm trying to make. Rousseau highlighted how humans are kind of born good. He also described how living rather simply and minimally away from corruption and consumerist and hedonistic societies that were being sprung up during his time was the way to live. This is kind of why he idolized, I guess you could say, the natives, because in them he saw a certain kind of simplicity. He did not see much greed.
Everything's a product. We're licensed intellectual property.
But I mean, back then the natives fought all the time, but you can understand the point Rousseau's trying to make. I don't think Rousseau's trying to say we should live exactly like the natives and act like that. You get the point, right? And yeah, you can see what I'm talking about. Yes, it is an abstract and a difficult concept to highlight, right? Even in Popper's book, he never defined what an open society is, and its definitions do not exist. It is something that changes and evolves due to modern understanding. So a society open today might be considered very closed in the future. And I'll give an example. If Karl Popper was born today, he would not have given the example of closed motor cars. He would have spoken about working from home, OnlyFans, and like sperm donation. In fact, he did actually talk about that. He talked about how auto-insemination or whatever could allow women to have kids themselves. I think he spoke about that in his book. You see, that's exactly the thing. If you are not living, you will be depressed. No amount of SSRIs or weed, okay, and note that I support full drug legalization, but yes, no amount of weed will cure your depression. No amount of SSRIs will fix. You are living shit, okay? Meditation can help. Okay, there is an example of how understanding and using traditional/religious activities to provide utility in a secular sense for all humans of all religious groups, okay? Meditation is such an example. No amount of content or technology will be able to replace organic ways of life. Okay, watching Seinfeld or Friends or whatever the fuck. Come on, that you're not happy. You're just fucking miserable. Okay. And don't get me wrong, technology can enhance life, okay? And it can allow us to enjoy certain things without consequences, but they cannot replace it. And there is no point in trying to replace them. We should study them and understand them and maybe even evolve them a little bit to make them more inclusive, okay? I get it, right? I'm using these fucking lefty words or whatever. And we should respect all people involved in them as well. Here's another thing. Fucking planes. And don't get me wrong when I say I support progress, no doubt. I just don't support degeneracy. I support freedom, but not irresponsibility, okay? These things can exist in a balance without getting completely rid of, I guess, like families or the idea of siblings or parents or whatever the fuck. These things can exist, and completely getting rid of them and replacing them with corporations, which is basically what an open society aims to do, is not the answer. Either way, thanks for watching, and have a nice day.